K is in Trouble is a graphic novel for middle grade readers. It tells the story of K, a young boy who's constantly in trouble no matter how behaved he tries to be. It's a tribute to the absurdities of childhood and how things can go wrong when you least expect it. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and welcome to the Kids Bookshelf. Ahead, we'll explore the book and talk with the author about the inspiration behind it. I requested and was provided with a copy of the book, but this video is not sponsored. Gary Clement is a Canadian artist, cartoonist, illustrator, and writer. He's the author and illustrator of several children's books, including The Great Poochini, which earned Canada's Governor-General's Literary Award in Children's Literature Illustration. His illustrations have appeared in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, and many other newspapers and magazines across North America. He joins us to talk about his debut graphic novel, K is in Trouble. Gary, welcome to the Kids Bookshelf.
Thank you, Dan. Pleasure to be here.
This is a fascinating, fun book. I enjoyed reading it. What was the inspiration behind it?
Well, the inspiration originally was that I'd started out with the idea of writing a graphic novel about Franz Kafka's childhood. And when I started working on it, it really was going to be a straight up kind of nonfiction, account. And I was reading biographical material. And of course, I'd read most of his fiction, if not all of it. And somehow it morphed into my biography. And I guess that's because I the reason I love Kafka so much is that I clearly identify with his worldview and his sense of the absurd and his sense of humor. So somehow my own biographical detail started drifting into the story, and it became this weird hybrid of little bits of actual biographical information about Franz Kafka's childhood, but actually a lot of it, in fact, most of it are stories that are adapted, let's say, from my own childhood, my own school experiences. I like to think of it this way. It's going to sound a little circuitous, but I bring up the original Star Trek, which I'm a huge fan of. And, Spock, Mr. Spock, Leonard Nimoy, became very closely identified with that character. And so identified that it drove him to write a book in the 70s called I Am Not Spock, which on the cover had a picture of him dressed as Spock, which sort of, muddied the water a little bit. I think when I write my biography, if that ever happens, mine will be I am K. I am definitely K, and K is me. So that's where it came from. So
tell us about the story that readers are going to find here in K is in Trouble.
Well, the reader will find stories about K never being on the right side of anything. He's always in trouble for basically just existing. He gets in trouble with his parents. He gets in trouble with his kids. He's assaulted by crows through no fault of his own, just by opening, a window. He is outsmarted by a fish. He really can never win. And that is his story. And it's not because he's doing anything to cause that to happen. He is just trying to get through the day, and get home safely and get in to have dinner and go to bed, but it never works out that way. Nothing ever works out the way he plans. And even when something looks like it is finally going to resolve in a, satisfactory fashion, it doesn't. It never does.
Gary, would you read a small portion of the book for us to give people a flavor of what they're going to find here?
Absolutely. Can I start at the beginning?
Start anywhere you'd like.
Usually a good place to start. So the first story is called Kay is Late. Kay woke up. As always, he did not want to go to school. He asked his mother if he could stay home. She told her he was feeling particularly unwell that morning. As always, she said, no. So he brushed his teeth and his hair and put on his school uniform. Breakfast awaited him on the dining room table. A loaf of dense black bread, a soft-boiled egg, a glass of prune juice, a bowl of grayish porridge, a plate of sardines swimming in oil. He did not eat. He put on his coat, gathered his satchel, said goodbye to his mother, and left for school. He walked through narrow, crowded streets. There were men and women rushing everywhere, to shops, factories, banks, and insurance companies. They carried briefcases and bags filled with smelly fish sandwiches, thermoses of bitter coffee, and ripe bananas. Sometimes people jostled him. They never apologized. Each step he took brought him closer to school. He took small steps in order to delay his arrival, but he got closer nonetheless.
This is a middle grade novel.
Yeah.
So for what age group would you recommend?
Well, I like to think it's for everyone, but and I'm not just saying that because my agent or the marketing people at Little Brown told me to say that, but I when I first engaged, when I met my agent, she asked me the very same question. What's the market? And I think her take on it was because I was Canadian. I sort of didn't understand market, and she might be right about that. But I said, well, it's an adult book. I was absolutely convinced that it was a book for adults because I wrote it, and I wasn't really thinking about kids. And she just basically firmly said, no, it's not an adult book. It's a middle grade book. And I said, okay, fine. Which I think, as far as I understand it, means roughly 9 to 12 years. But I will say, in my in defense of my original intention, that many of the reviews so far have said adults will enjoy it too, which is kind of what I was hoping for, because I look to certain writers who I read to my kids, like writers like William Steig, who wrote fantastic picture books that I loved reading. And I think most adults that I know that read them loved reading. Like there's a respect for the language, and while they're obviously, they're picture books, but I think that really anyone who loves reading could enjoy that. So I'm hoping that's what I'm hoping for. 9 to 12 plus or minus.
I would agree with that because I enjoyed reading it as well. And I particularly like your use of language. And there's one of my favorite phrase, and I'll have to look down so I can quote this correctly. Yeah. But this is in the story about the field trip. And you write, to Kay's great relief, the ride, which seemed interminable, finally terminated when the train rolled into the terminal. I like how you use the words in that phrase.
I thank you. My editor enjoyed that one also. I felt like I can't do that like with every sentence, although sometimes I want to, because it could get a little too much. But thank you. That was I'm very happy that you highlighted that particular sentence, because that is maybe my favorite, or in the top 3 for me. Yeah.
And the other thing about, adults enjoying this, I think all of us have those days where we can identify with Kay and just, no matter what we do, it just goes all wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think that's where the book comes from. And I carry those experiences with me from my childhood. Like they're, everything that happened to you when you were a kid. That's part, you don't just, most people don't, I think, just box it and put it away and never think about it. It forms who you are. And I think that, again, going back to the original intention of the book, I think that I'd started, the way it kind of ended up being more about me was that I started thinking about what were the events in Kafka's life, in his childhood life, that ended up with creating him. How did he get to have that worldview? You're not born that way. I don't think things have to happen in order for you to have this incredibly idiosyncratic way of approaching the world and looking at it. And it had to come from childhood. And in fact, reading his biography, I think that he had this horrible relationship with his father, who it never resolved. In his late 30s, he wrote an 80-page letter to his father outlining his grievances. Who does that? We all have issues with our parents at one point or another, but to sit down and actually, almost 40 years later, actually line it out, just normally, what do? We tell our therapists stuff like that, maybe, but we don't write 80-page letters to our parents. Clearly, this had a profound effect on him, and I think changed or formed his psyche.
Gary, you are both the author and the illustrator in this case, and often with books, you have a separate author and illustrator. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like being both gives you a creative advantage?
100%. I have a fairly long history of illustrating picture books, and written by me, but also written by others. And I think when you're it's like when you're doing your own story, I think you have complete creative control. It's a kind of liberating freedom. There are editors to deal with, not always a bad thing. But it really is kind of the best possible way to do it. I think for me, I just, I don't have any trouble interpreting other people's stories. I've enjoyed it, but I really do get the highest degree of satisfaction from it being of me being completely in control, I guess, as much as one can be in control of anything in life. It's a very, contained space for me. It's kind of how I live my life. I have my little studio on the 3rd floor. I'm the boss here. This is my story. I'm drawing it, and all is good.
The thing I enjoy about your illustrations for this book is that there seems to be sort of a timeless quality about it, which I really enjoy. How would you describe your illustration style?
Well, timeless is good. I like that. I think I don't know if I've ever thought about that. To be honest with you, I think it's idiosyncratic for sure. I have many influences, as I think any artist will tell you. It doesn't come out of absolutely nowhere, but I think that I don't know. I can't even. I think that I've looked to people again like William Steig and Edward Gorey and Myra Kalman, who's also a wonderful New York picture book illustrator, and actually she's done many other books that were not picture books. And the thing I've enjoyed, the thing I love about each of their styles is that they are not like anyone else's style. They are, obviously they went to art school. They looked at other artists. They absorbed their lessons, but they somehow managed to create the style that if anyone draws or paints like that, people will immediately say, "Oh, that's it. You're channeling it with Gorey." So I think the thing that I've gone for is to basically never have that happen. Just to draw a kind of the way I naturally draw, if I can say that, like the way that I started drawing on my own when I was a kid, and somehow developed a line through that, absorbing little bits of influence here and there. But I think I'm going to go with idiosyncratic and timeless. I'm going to use timeless in the next bio.
Okay. Yeah. You don't even have to credit me for that. It's all right. I want to talk a little bit more about this story because, as an adult, like I said, I enjoyed reading it because I think all of us can kind of identify with that when you're a kid, that adults aren't always paying attention to you and they draw assumptions about your behavior that aren't necessarily true. So do you think that's why this will appeal to kids, because they'll recognize that that's part of their world?
Absolutely. I think, I wish I read this when I was a kid somehow, like that. It's not just me, and I, you will be surprised to hear, got into quite a bit of trouble when I was a kid at school. And, I just, I really felt like, no one got me. I didn't, and I will also, very readily admit that I was kind of a weirdo at school. I went to a school that was highly academic. I was not that way. I was really interested in drawing, which was not considered like anything in those days. It was when I was a kid. I'm not sure if that's changed at all, but it really was like nobody knew what to make of that or to do about it. It was kind of like, he'll get over it or something. And I was completely not, understood, underappreciated, and no one quite got it. One of the stories, the first story that I was reading from, Kay gets in trouble for basically not doing anything, gets sent to the principal's office, and that's directly related to my own childhood experience of getting in trouble in class and being sent to the principal's office. And it was a private school, and they had this weird system where when you got sent to the principal's office, you had to sign a discipline sheet, something they called a discipline sheet. And the top question was always, why were you sent to the office? And my answer was always, I don't know. And that was that I think kind of outlines my childhood. And I think that probably there are lots of kids out there who just, had the same response. Like, I don't know. Why am I getting in trouble? I don't know. Why is this happening to me? I don't know.
The book is about Kay, and all the other characters also have single letter names like Z or Q or whatever it might be. What was the reasoning behind that?
True. It's also channeling, again, Kafka, because in many, not all of Kafka's books, but many of Kafka's books, characters are lettered. In The Trial, for example, the main character is K. Or is it Joseph K? No, now I'm mixing up stories. But anyways, there are many lettered characters in Kafka. So I thought I would just go with that. And by the way, it's not Z, it's Z.
Z, yes, of course.
It's Canada.
Absolutely. So this is your first graphic novel.
Yeah.
Is there a chance there will be more adventures with Kay in the future?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm working on the second book now. So there's a second volume of stories that will be released. Well, I don't know when, but as soon as I'm done, I'm working on the color right now. So there will be a second volume, and who knows?
Kay is in Trouble is a graphic novel for middle grade readers by Gary Clement. Gary, thank you for talking with me today.
My pleasure, Dan. I really enjoyed it.
Now, if you'd like to purchase Kay is in Trouble, I've placed a link for you in the description below. Thank you for watching this edition of the Kids Bookshelf. And if you'd like to see more videos about children's books and their authors, be sure to subscribe, like, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. And if you're interested in books for young adult and older readers, be sure to check out my Some Books Considered channel. I'm Dan Skinner. Until next time, keep sharing the gift of reading.